welcome to Nazarene Israel. My name is Norman Willis, and in this video series, we've been talking about set-apart communities. What are they? Why are they so very important? And basically, why does Yahweh Elohim expect or want us all to live in set-apart community? Well, as we saw in our study on the Beit Din structure, one of the things about it is that just as the nuclear family is the building block of society, the set-apart community is the basic building block of Yeshua's kingdom. So if we want to build Yeshua's kingdom, then we need to take part in set-apart community. It's one of those things that we can do that automatically helps to build Yeshua's kingdom. It's so very important. And of course, anytime you get people together and they're in the Spirit, they're not going to have any problems at all because everyone has the Spirit and everyone hears perfectly in the Spirit and everyone knows what the Spirit told them, so there's no problems, right? Well, the reality is people have lots of problems when they go to live in community because not everyone hears in the Spirit and people quench the Spirit and people do all kinds of things that they shouldn't do with regards to Yeshua's Spirit. So what is needed then is some means of resolving disputes, some means of helping people to get along, because Yahweh is an Elohim of order and not of disorder, as in all the assemblies of the saints. So there has to be some way to bring resolution to disputes that is done in a loving and servant-like manner. So in part one of this series, we talked about the importance of not practicing what's called lashon hara, or evil speech, or the evil tongue. And along with that, we also talked in the video prior to that about the importance of having the correct spirit. One of the things that we saw is that in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Hava, or Eve, stopped listening to Yahweh's voice. They decided that they were going to do what they wanted to do. So they stopped listening to Yahweh, and of course, as a result, they stopped obeying his commandments. So as a result, came from the fall from Yahweh's favor or grace. And then not long thereafter, their son Cain, or Cain, slew Hevel, or Abel, his brother. And when Yahweh asked him what had happened, he said, "Am I my brother's keeper?" And as we saw in that study, the answer to that is a resounding yes. Yahweh does expect us to serve as our brother's keepers. And this particular attitude, or this spirit of knowing that we are called to be our brother's keepers, is so quintessential for living in set-apart community. If we don't understand that we are in fact our brother's keepers, then set-apart community becomes impossible. And also the Matthew 18 process becomes impossible, because without the correct spirit, there's no way to properly keep the commandments, because there's no way to serve Yahweh Elohim in our flesh. We can only serve him through the renewing of our minds. That's the only way we can serve him. Now, one of the things that I've watched a number of Matthew 18 processes over the years, and one of the things that people make a mistake in doing is they launch straight into Matthew 18, starting in verse 15. And many people consider this the meat of the Matthew 18 process, and indeed it is. But unless you get the appetizer and the rest of the course, you can't digest the meat very well, so to speak. So, for example, in verse 15, Yeshua says, "Moreover, if your brother sins against you." Well, moreover means he made his point already. So what is that point? And then moreover, verses 15 through 17. So we need to take what he's saying here in context if we're going to understand what it was that Yeshua truly said and what he means. So we're going to back up to the beginning of Matthew chapter 18, starting in verse 1. So Matthew, or Matityahu, chapter 18 and verse 1. At that time the disciples came to Yeshua, saying, "Who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" And Yeshua called a little child to him and set him in the midst of them and said, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you become converted and become as little children, you shall by no means enter the kingdom of heaven." He says, "Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven." And of course, the disciples were surprised to hear that. Well, if we observe little children, or let's say children before the age of puberty, there's a big difference between children before puberty and after puberty. Before puberty, when children start mate selection, essentially, there's very little competition. They don't have hostility. They don't have envy. What they're really looking for is to have a good time with the other children. There's a lot less sabotage activity, we might say. The children tend to look out for each other more, because what they want is a good, safe, stable, loving environment for everyone. And so this is the attitude that Yeshua says we must have in order to enter into the kingdom. Well, so then he continues in verse 5, and Yeshua says, no, Cain was right. You're not really your brother's keeper. If anyone's not perfect in your sight, you just kick him out of the assembly and without any due process whatsoever. You're the leader, you're in charge, you just make up things at random and you're going to judge in your own power and strength. Oh, no, wait. No. That's not what it says, is it? Okay, no, wait. No, so what Yeshua actually says in Matthew 18 and verse 5, no matter that we've seen so many examples of what we just read on the previous slide, what Yeshua actually says to do is he says, whoever receives one little child, and we can think in terms of spiritual children. And the role of an elder effectively is and I don't mean to use the wrong term here, but effectively they serve as role models or as examples to the flock, very similar to how parents serve in their own families. So sometimes people think about the elders of the congregation as the spiritual parents of the congregation, which is by no means to suggest that anyone should be called father, because we have only one Father in heaven. But Yeshua is saying, whoever therefore receives a little child like this in my name receives me. And we have to remember or bear in mind that he's also talking about spiritual children. When someone comes to an assembly, when someone's brand new in the faith, if they've been in the faith less than a year or two, they're effectively spiritual children. They have a lot of spiritual growing to do. So not only does it take time to grow physically, it also takes time to grow spiritually. So when you're dealing with people who haven't been in the faith a long time, you really have to take care with them. So Yeshua says that whoever causes one of these little ones who believe in me to sin, it would be better for him if a millstone were hung around his neck and he were drowned in the depths of the sea. And this was an actual punishment that they used to use in ancient times. When someone was guilty of death, they would tie heavy stones or weights around his neck. Sometimes they'd wrap them in lead foil, whatever they would do, and then they would take them in a boat and throw them out of the boat into the ocean or into the sea. So Yeshua is saying it's better that we should die a physical death than that we should suffer the spiritual death that's going to come from mistreating one of the little ones that Yahweh has called. And this is a wake-up call for anyone and everyone who would hope to become an elder or even a deacon, any kind of a spiritual servant leader. Now we're told, Yeshua tells us, that offenses will come. There's no way around it, because we have to be tested. We have to be trained. Shaul talks about how you'll have both sheep and goats in the same assembly. You'll have wheat and tares in the same assembly. And that's because there has to be a difference that's made so that the approved ones can be shown to be approved. But there will be trials, but we don't want to be one of the ones through whom the trials come. And especially not if we're in leadership, because especially if we're in leadership, we're held to a much higher standard. And if we start stumbling and causing little ones to stumble, it will be better for us as if we were drowned in the depths of the sea. And Yeshua continues in verse 8, if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, don't worry about it. You can have the lust of the eyes and the lust of the flesh and the pride of life. You can be double-minded and no one will care. So no, that's not what it says, is it? We see so many abuses of the Matthew 18 process in Christianity and in the Messianic movement, because people, again, they refuse to be converted. They will quench the Spirit. They won't walk in the Spirit. And so therefore, their judgment doesn't come from the Spirit. And that's a problem because there is no way to serve Yahweh Elohim faithfully unless we walk and speak according to his Spirit. That's why leaders of the assemblies, that's why the apostolic priesthood, they must hear in the Spirit so they can then speak and render judgment according to the Spirit. So Yeshua says, actually what he says is, he says, if your hand or foot causes you to sin, now we're talking about the lusts of the flesh. We know from Yaakov or James that all that is in the world consists of the lusts of the eyes, the lusts of our flesh, and our pride. So these are three types of stumbling blocks that will be with us as long as we're alive, as long as we have these bodies of flesh. So Yeshua is warning us. He's saying, if your hand or your foot, if your flesh causes you to sin, it's better, at least in a figurative sense, to cut it off and cast it away from you. Because it's better to enter into life, this physical life, this temporal life with a maimed and mutilated body, rather than having a whole and complete body with two well-functioning hands and two well-functioning legs or feet, and to be cast into everlasting hellfire. And he says, if the lusts of your eye cause you to sin, if you're looking at women or if you're looking at men or whatever it is that you're doing, then at least in a figurative sense, pluck it out and cast it from you. Because it's better to enter into life with one eye rather than having two eyes and to be cast into hellfire. So he's trying to drive home the point. We really need to be conscious. We need to be aware of the trip hazards that are the lust of our eyes, the lusts of our flesh, and our pride. These things trip us up. And Yeshua then goes on, he says, if any man is overtaken in a trespass, you who are spiritual, in charge of the assembly, you should pass judgment and just jump all over him for not understanding. If he doesn't arrive perfectly, if he doesn't already know everything, even though he's a spiritual child, you don't need to bear with him in love. Oh no, wait. No, wait. Okay, no, sorry. That's what happens, but that's not what should happen. Okay, so what he actually says, starting in verse 10, is Yeshua says, take heed. That means be careful. When he says take heed, that means this is something that can easily happen to you, to me, to any one of us. So we have to be careful. We have to take heed not to despise the little ones. Speed meaning both physical children and also spiritual children. When someone is new in the faith, we have to take extra measures. Those of us who are called to be shepherds, our calling is to guard the sheep, to take care of the sheep, to look after the sheep. Sheep, they don't have very good eyesight. So they can't see the wolf coming. They can't see the bear coming. So they need someone to look out for them. So he says, take heed that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I say to you that in heaven, their messengers or their angels always see the face of my Father who's in heaven. He says, for the Son of Man has come to save that which was lost. And this is a very special warning, again, to leaders. If someone arrives in the assembly and they don't know everything, that's our job as leaders to help lead them in the correct way that they should go. Being a servant leader is a very, very difficult job. It's a full-time job. And it takes someone who truly loves people to show people the manner in which we're supposed to love Yahweh's children. He says, for the Son of Man has come to save, not to judge, not to reject, not to cast out, not to cast down, not to blame, but to save that which was lost. He says, what do you think? What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep in his congregation, and one of them goes astray, one of them, let's say he starts looking to Hebrew roots or something like that, and one of them goes astray, does he not leave the 99 and go to the mountains to seek the one that is straying? We're talking a true shepherd here. We're not talking a hireling. We're talking someone who actually loves the flock. He loves the sheep. So when the sheep starts to go astray, let's say, a busy pastor with a prosperity gospel organization or whatever, he's one house, messianic, whatever, but they have a fixed, rigid doctrine. They're not truly seeking the truth. Or you've got a Sunday church or whatever it is that you're doing, they're not truly seeking the truth. He's going to let the one go. He's going to stay with the 99 that are paying the bills for him. But if you have someone who truly loves the sheep, he's going to go, hey, I've noticed you haven't been here. You seem distant. What can I do for you? How can I help you? Do you have questions? Do you have doctrinal issues? Do we need to sit down and study some things out? What's going on? What's going on with you? How can I help you? These are the kinds of attitudes. We have to be our brother's keepers. We have to look out for the spiritual little ones who are not capable of looking out for themselves yet. And he says, and if he should find it, assuredly I say to you, he rejoices more over that sheep than over the 99 that did not go astray. Because here you have someone who's wandering away because they're not finding the answers they need, and you help them find the answers they need. Well, that's a cause for rejoicing. And not only that, because that's how you learn and grow as a spiritual elder. Every time I've seen spiritual elders just reject the sheep for not arriving perfect or what have you, it doesn't end well. It doesn't go well for them or for the assembly. The only thing that goes well is when the sheep have a problem and they love the sheep enough and they say, you know what? Yahweh has placed me in this position. I am my brother's keeper. I need to take care of this little one. These 99 that are here, they're going to be okay. I need to go look out for this little one. And again, that's how you learn and grow. That's where the spiritual, and not just the doctrinal learning. That's also where the emotional learning, that's where the spiritual learning takes place, is because you're loving the little ones. And then that's not to say that we need to put up with people who are causing trouble, because there's plenty of those. And if someone is intent on causing trouble, then that just needs to get dealt with. That's a whole separate issue. But if you've got someone who's genuinely not finding the answers that they need, that's a leader's job, is to take care of the sheep that Yahweh brings them. Yahweh is the one who calls the sheep. It's our job as leaders and teachers to care for the sheep. Goats are another matter. But sheep, if you've got a sheep, you need to take care of the sheep. Then he goes on in verse 15, he says, moreover, if your brother sins against you, go and tell everyone what he did wrong and warn them all about him and tell the people what he did wrong and to watch out and be, oh no, wait. No, sorry, that's what happens, but that's not what Yeshua says should happen. What Yeshua says is, if your brother sins against you, and this is a message not just for the leaders, but this is a message for every single person in the congregation. New to the congregation, old to the congregation, this is how we're supposed to do it. And this is so, I see this one messed up more than anything else. He says, moreover, if your brother sins against you, so some kind of issue has happened with your brother or your sister, go and tell him his fault between you and him alone. And if he hears you, you've gained your brother. And what Yeshua is really saying here is, if your brother or sister does something wrong to you, you have to go to them directly first. So there's these sayings, at least we have in English, you have to man up, you have to woman up, you have to cowboy up, whatever your saying is that you do. You have to take the courage. Now, sometimes you'll have to take counsel with someone else. Sometimes you'll have to talk to someone in confidence so that you can understand the position of the other person. You can get to know who they are so that you can help them, because our goal is to speak the truth to them in love. So speaking the truth in love isn't easy, but again, that's what we're called to do. So in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15, now this is part of the fivefold ministry doctrine. So Shaul tells us that part of the reason or part of the promise for the fivefold ministry is that if we will walk out the fivefold ministry, if we will do the things that the fivefold ministry says to do, then we shall no longer be spiritual children who are tossed to and fro, and they're carried about with every wind of prosperity doctrine by the trickery of the book salesman, in the cunning craftiness of deceitful plotting of the people who say we don't need to come together in set-apart communities. He says, but speaking the truth in love. So this is something that we're commanded to do, that the body may grow up in all things into him who is the head, Messiah. And what we're seeing here in Ephesians 4 and verse 15, and what we're also seeing in the Matthew 18 process, is the manner by which Yeshua expects us to help people come into his kingdom. So what he's saying is, if the people aren't going to hear, then just take one or two people that whoever is going to side with you in the discussion. They don't need to be servant leaders of the congregation. Just pick a few friends are going to go along with whatever you say. Oh no, wait. Sorry again. That's what happens as opposed to what should happen. But no, so we're not supposed to pick rubber stamp leaders. That's not what we're supposed to do. So verse 16, Yeshua continues, and he says, so you're going to talk first with the person who has offended you. We have to take courage. We have to be adults. If you need to talk with someone, you need to talk to one of the servant leaders in confidence, this kind of a thing, to figure out what's going on and how to approach your brother in love, remembering that we are our brother's keepers, that we don't want to practice Lashon Hara, we don't want to practice evil speech, but we need to protect people's reputations, because this is, as King Solomon says, love covers a multitude of sins. So if we love our brothers, and we have to first go to them privately, and this gets violated all the time. People go about as talebearers and as slanderers. This gets violated all the time, but it mustn't happen. Going about as a talebearer or a slanderer, that is a very serious offense. So we go first to our neighbor in love, the one who's offended us. If he does, and try our very, very best to solve things privately so that there's no damage to anyone's reputation. And it says, but if he will not hear, which happens, then take with you one or two more, that by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses every word may be established. And the wisdom here is that if congregational leadership is available, the ideal is to take the congregational servant leadership. And we're going to see why in this next slide. It says, and if he refuses to agree with your opinions, broadcast it to the assembly. Go on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and tell everyone. Oh no, wait. Sorry, again, that's what does happen sometimes. And that's because the leadership of the congregation is trying to do things in their own power and strength. And a lot of leaders, they don't hear in the Spirit, or they quench the Spirit. And so they end up giving leadership of the Spirit. And so that, again, this is something for every true sheep. You have to be smart enough to spot the wolves in sheep's clothing. You have to be smart enough to come under true servant leadership. You have to be able to discern and know the difference, so that when there is adjudication involved, it's someone who actually cares about you, as opposed to someone who's just going to be the judge, jury, and executioner. Okay, what Yeshua really said is, and if he refused, now remember, we've gone to the neighbor privately, and then now we've taken one or two more, hopefully of the servant leaders of the congregation. He says, and if he refuses to hear the servant leaders of the congregation, or if he refuses to hear them, then what do? If you're not listening to the leadership, then you have to tell it to the assembly. But then if he refuses to hear even the assembly, then that's not someone who needs to be in your congregation with you. So Yeshua says, let him be to you like a heathen and a tax collector. Why? Is because he's not accepting discipline. He's not only is he not hearing in the Spirit, but he's not listening to those who do hear in the Spirit. And that's not discipleship. So if you're dealing with someone who's being stubborn and stiff-necked and he doesn't want to listen to discipline, then that's not a disciple. And disciples, they can come for services if they want, but if you're talking a kibbutz or even a close-knit moshav, that's not the place for someone who's being stubborn. And that kind of thing has to be handled judiciously. One of the things, just to bear in mind, this is also another reason for doing this with the servant leaders of the congregation, is you really don't want people doing this at random. Like if you can imagine a congregation of 100 people or what have you, and this family decides that they have an issue with that family, and so they go get one or two more families, and now they've got people in the congregation broadcasting to the assembly, to the whole congregation, what they feel, and the servant leadership knows nothing of this. So that can't happen. That's not appropriate. What happens is that in Israel, now under democracy, people do what they want to do, and that's a trick of Satan, because that's the satanic law, is do what you want, or do as thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. That's from the satanic Bible. But Yahweh's way is not that way. Yahweh is an Elohim of order and not of disorder, as in all the assemblies of the saints. So we have to be careful to operate within the framework of policy that Yahweh sets. We have to operate within the Beit Din structure, as we explained in our video on the Beit Din structure. So Yeshua says then, he says, assuredly I say to you, and particularly he's talking about the servant leadership. We're talking about people here who hear in the Spirit and speak according to the Spirit. So Yeshua says, assuredly I say to you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. And he says, again, I say to you that if two of you, again, we're talking about people who are hearing in the Spirit, if two of you agree on earth concerning anything that they ask, it shall be done for them by my Father who is in heaven. He says, for where two or three are gathered together in my name, there I am in the midst of them. Now, and the wisdom here is to understand that, again, Yeshua is speaking something that's a riddle. It's a mystery, so to speak, because there are other studies on this particular passage, and what he really says in the Greek is whatever you bind on earth will already have been bound in the heavens. So in other words, because it has to be that way, because if Yahweh will bind in heaven whatever we bind on earth, that makes us effectively demigods. So like the Pope. So we run around and we issue our judgment of things, and then Yahweh has to bless it because we agreed. We have two or three people and we agreed, and we don't listen in the Spirit, we don't hear in the Spirit, but it doesn't matter because Yeshua promises there's two or three of us and we're agreed and we call in his name, and so therefore he's going to bless it. No, but that's not what Yeshua is actually saying here. What Yeshua is actually saying is a riddle to some people, but what he's actually saying is, if you're hearing in the Spirit, which your congregational eldership should be, your congregational leaders need to hear in the Spirit. Sometimes deacons are not there yet, but to be an elder, you really have got to hear in the Spirit and act according to the Spirit, at least ideally. But when you have elders who are listening in the Spirit, this is where we get the concept of a foundation of apostles and prophets, because by definition, apostles and prophets both hear in the Spirit and then speak according to it. So if someone is not capable of hearing in the Spirit and speaking according to it, then how do you know he's rendering judgment according to the Spirit and not according to human understanding? And again, this is something for every sheep. You have to be wise enough to tell the difference between an elder who hears in the Spirit and speaks according to it and someone who does not. And a lot of people are not that wise, but we can't take control. All we can do is we can help the people who come to us for leadership and adjudication. That's basically all we can do. So, but again, it says, whatever you bind on earth shall already have been bound in heaven. And that's the correct understanding, because someone who's listening in the Spirit is going to listen for what Yahweh says to do, and that's what he's going to speak. That's what they're going to bind, just as we see in Acts chapter 15. So that's the understanding, and that's where most people take a wrong turn. It's because most people don't hear in the Spirit, because most people quench the Spirit and not walk in it. So that's the quintessential difference. Now, it's so important to realize that shunning, as in the Matthew 18 process, basically what we're dealing with is the spiritual equivalent of death by stoning in the Melchizedekian order. Under the Levitical order, anyone who breaks Yahweh's Torah dies on the word of 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, but that's for the land of Israel. That's not something that we're doing right now, at least not in most nations. Right now, we're under the Melchizedekian order. In the Melchizedekian order, we need to obey the governments which are appointed over us. And most governments in the world, they don't allow stoning for these kinds of offenses. Some governments do, but that's not our goal, because the Son of Man came to save that which was lost. So what happens is that when someone refuses to accept discipline, if you come to them and you try to speak the truth to them in love, and they reject it, they reject you, then you bring 1 or 2 elders of the assembly, servant leaders, and they reject them, they don't listen to them, and then it's like, whoa, what are we going to do? So we have to take the case to the assembly, because the assembly needs to understand what's going on. We explain the whole case to the assembly in an open and honest and loving manner, and the assembly's like, wow, this is terrible. This is something that should never happen. And they refuse even to listen to the assembly. Once again, they have no reason to be within the camp. So this is a case where you have to put the sin outside the camp. So it's the Melchizedekian order version of stoning. And there's no destruction to the body, but there's definitely, the spiritual implications are severe. The spiritual implications are profound. As it says in 1 Corinthians chapter 5, starting in verse 1, the Apostle Shaul tells us that in Corinth, which was a center for temple cult prostitution, he says it is actually reported, this is a shocking, stunning thing, it is actually reported there's sexual immorality among you, which should not be. And such sexual immorality is not even named among the Gentiles, that a man has his father's wife. He says, but you're puffed up, and you've not rather mourned that he who has done this thing might be taken away from you. And he says, but I indeed, as absent in the body, I'm present in the spirit, and I've already judged, as though I were present, him who has so done this deed, because Shaul is hearing in the spirit. So the spirit communicates. And he says, in the name of our Adon, our master Yeshua HaMashiach, when you are gathered together, along with my spirit, with the power of our Adon Yeshua HaMashiach, deliver such a one to Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that his spirit may be saved in the day of the Master Yeshua. And that's the understanding that we have here. Is the implicit understanding is that everyone in set-apart community has to want to be in set-apart community, and he has to want to do the right thing. And if that's not the case, then that person is not a candidate for set-apart community. So I hope people will understand the importance of set-apart community, and they will also understand the importance of the Matthew 18 process. And please join us again for part 3, where we're going to talk about what happens with adultery in Matthew chapter 18. Shalom.